Okay, hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's John at Matchless Web, and I'm joined today by Kilian Valkhof. He is the developer of a wonderful piece of software called Polypane. It is a product you may have seen me use in a video or two here on the channel when doing some responsiveness testing between device sizes, seeing how a website displays. For different screen widths and dimensions and that kinds of thing, but it does a whole lot more than that, and I'm still learning myself. But Kilian's going to help us kind of get up to speed on who the tool is good for, and then we'll do a little bit of demonstration here as well. So before we start playing with some things, Kilian, can you give us just a little background information on yourself and how you came about developing this product?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually a web developer. So I studied to be a web developer. I know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I do some backend work, but poorly. And I used to run an internet agency here in the Netherlands, where I live. And while I was running that agency, I at some point got very frustrated with having to resize my browser all the time, because at the same time, around that time, I was switching over to Sketch for design work. And what Sketch does really nicely, which all design tools do now, but back then only Sketch did that really well, was they used artboards. So what that allows you to do is have like 3 or 4 different designs side by side. And that's really nice because you can have like the mobile version, the tablet version, and the desktop version all side by side in the same view. So it becomes really easy to compare between them. And like as you're working on one, you can refer back to the other to see if everything, aligns and kind of looks like it should look. And basically I was contrasting that with my experience implementing the designs I made. I had this really nice experience designing them. I had a good overview and I could see where everything had to go and how everything, matched to each other across different screen sizes. And then back in the browser, I was resizing and only seeing one size at a time. So I decided to create basically like a little prototype that just had 3 iframes side by side, like a really small one, a medium one, and a large one. And so I started using that instead of Chrome. And I liked it, but I didn't really think much about it. Like it was just something that I used. Until a while later, I went back and looked at my hours and contrasted using the tool with websites I had built without using the tool. And noticed that while using the tool, I spent 60% less time on implementing a design. So that was quite a shock. Yeah. That it would have such a big effect. I hadn't anticipated that. And basically from that point on, I figured, there's something here. There's a product that I should make and share with people. And that's basically how Polypane got started. And like from there, all I've really been doing is, adding features that I want to use as a web developer. Like what's missing right now, what's frustrating, can I implement something to make that easier?
Yeah, and I think that's the best way that the best products come about. It's usually somebody solving their own problems, scratching their own itch, as it were. So I love it. It's a great tool, and I'm so excited to get to play with it a little bit here today, just to show it off. So, and I know that I'm going to learn some things too, because like I mentioned, I've used it for responsiveness testing, and I think I've done a little bit of accessibility testing. But it does so much, and I think it'd be great to highlight some of those things today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up a screen to share, and the screen that I'm going to start with is Polypane. So this is the tool, and what I've got here is, so Polypane is a browser, right? It's like a development browser where you can select however many different device sizes you'd like to be viewing at any given time. And the cool thing is you can have as many as you like. I mean, I've got 5 total that I have pulled up here. But I mean, you can select a specific device. I personally use an iPhone 11 right now. And so I can select, if I want to see exactly, hey, how's this page going to look on my device? Then I might want to preview the site there. And if I scroll down the page on that device, it also scrolls the other device sizes in sync so that you see how things are looking and behaving across those different viewport widths. And so it's great. I see I have an available update, which means, whoops, even more awesome things are coming. When I X'd out, I just closed it. So it'll just going to come back to us. But what I'd like to do maybe is just to, so I'm going to share. So this is the homepage of my course website. And what I'm going to do is grab that URL because I was just on the sales page for the course itself. But if I come to, so I'm reloading Polypane now, I'm going to come to just like the home page and just show maybe some things we can demo here. So
yeah, so I have the first tip for you already.
Yeah, tell me.
Polypane has a browser extension for Chrome that you can add, and it adds a little Polypane icon to your address bar and to any link that you right click, and you can send the current tab or any link right over to Polypane. If it's not open, it will launch Polypane with that URL, and if it's already open, it will just open a new tab in Polypane.
Yeah.
So that saves you from having to copy and paste links to Polypane. You can find it at polypane.com/download, and I have extensions for basically every browser. So it doesn't matter whether you use Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, Opera, Brave, or Vivaldi. I have an extension for you that can send whatever link you're currently looking at right to Polypane.
I love that. And the so the engine kind of running Polypane, I know that if you were to right click and inspect, you can effectively, it looks like Chrome DevTools. Is it using Chromium? Is that the base for?
Yeah. So Polypane is based on Chromium.
Yeah.
And I try to keep the specific engine up to date. So right now you're using Chromium 91, which is the not the latest version, but the version before that. And then the next update to Polypane is going to match the current version of Chromium again.
Awesome. Love that. So kind of like I mentioned, I mean, the way that I've previously used this is maybe testing breakpoints at, different devices that I know that either I'm using, or if I have a client and I will frequently ask them, especially when I get towards the end of a project and I'm doing responsiveness testing, I'll ask them, hey, what kind of phone do you have? Because I know they're going to look at the site on their phone. And so I want to know that, yes, I'll have general, breakpoints sorted for, most, modern devices. But if there's a specific device that I can dial in for them, I want them to for sure have a great view, of what their device is going to look like. So
yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Like probably it will work fine on their phone, but there might be like some line wrapping or something you can, slightly tweak. So that's definitely a good idea.
Yeah. And I mean, a perfect example would be, so this is an iPad 7 displayed here, and that's not a device size that I've, optimized on this website. And so all the text and the buttons are all stacked here to the left. And I might let the text go a little bit wider, maybe set a wider max width there, which is something I might not ever know because I don't have that device. And if I wasn't using a tool like this to test that viewport width, or if I wasn't in Chrome, selecting a responsive setting or selecting that device viewport width, I would not know that. But just to see it all at a glance really quickly, and again, across as many devices as you want to load in here, it's really handy. So yeah, responsiveness, we know that we can set, things like we might normally do with media queries, or maybe we might set it in the default WordPress breakpoints. for desktop, mobile, and tablet. But if you want to have breakpoints that are, anywhere in between that, you might need some custom media queries. And this is a great place to figure out, what those breakpoints need to be and what your CSS changes might need to be. So that's what I'm most familiar with using Polypane for. But just looking at this page, is there anything that you would say, hey, let's look at this specific feature to look at what else Polypane can do?
So I think it's interesting to go a little bit over how you can work with panes, because right now you've selected a bunch of device presets, and those are really nice because they come with like the right user agents, the right pixel ratio, the right dimensions. All of them are viewport aware. So for example, if you have that iPhone 12 Pro Max, that device has a specific width and height. But if you're looking at a website in mobile Safari, then it's not using the entire height or width of that device, right? There's the address bar and there's the bar at the bottom. So if you click on the title right now, then all the way at the top, you can toggle between viewport size and device size. So if you're designing something like a PWA, you can switch over to device size and have the exact pixel height and width of the entire device. By default, you'll want to use the viewport size because that takes into account the height of that address bar and the bottom bar when you're developing. And even when you like rotate this device, an iPhone 12 on landscape isn't just the dimensions rotated, right? Because on landscape, there's some extra padding on the sides to make sure that the notch doesn't fall over your content.
Right.
So Polypane takes all of that into account when you use the devices, which is super nice. But you don't have to do that. Every pane you see here is freeform resizable. So you can grab any of the right or the bottom edges or the bottom right corner and resize it to whatever fits for you. If you're working on a device and you want to quickly check, what does this look like? If it's slightly wider or slightly narrower, you can just grab the edge and resize it.
Yeah. And I love that because especially when it comes to things like critical CSS, with Core Web Vitals being, such a big deal right now, and everybody wanting to optimize their pages as much as possible. Of course, everything within the viewport, like the actual viewport, not the device dimensions, but what's in the viewport is what needs to be, that CSS, the critical CSS, everything above the fold is what needs to be accounted for. Now, it may just be a few different pixels, difference between the viewport and the device size. If you look at, the height, the length, it may not be a ton, but who knows? In some case, if you've got some little element that is above the fold, say on mobile, that you weren't accounting for because you were maybe primarily concerned with one of these or the other, you might have something fly in to the viewport that shifts the page. So then you have some cumulative layout shift. And if you weren't accounting for that before, well, then maybe you can go back, tweak some critical CSS to account for that, which is very handy. So love that feature. That's great.
Yeah. So speaking of Web Vitals, if you click the button in the top right corner, like right next or of the entire app.
Oh, in the entire app. Got it.
Then you can actually turn on Show Web Vital Status.
There we go.
And now at the bottom of each pane is a new little tab.
Look at all
that shows you the Web Vitals as recorded for that specific size.
Yeah.
So that will map to the needs improvement and poor rating that Google gives you for things like cumulative layout shift and largest contentful paint. So in this case, you can see that the LCP, largest contentful paint, took much longer than Google thinks it should be. So now you know that this is something to dig into and to fix. And then for other sites, it might be, CLS, cumulative layout shifts, that might need some work. And with this, you're sort of like ambiently aware of where the issues are.
Absolutely. And I want to highlight, so I use both. So this is my course site, and then I use also my main website for some demos within the course itself, because in the site speed course, we address core web vitals and some of these things. And so presently, the image that's used in the background here is, I think it's roughly 9 times larger than than it would ideally be, because I'm recording my my EU image optimizer video here later on today, actually. And in that video, this perfectly leads into it. In that video, I'm going to demonstrate how, hey, if we take this oversized image above the fold, adjust the sizing of it so that it is auto-scaled to the correct, it's delivered, it's served in the correct dimensions, and it's WebP and all these things to where the perfect size image is served in, then we're going to then get rid of the largest contentful paint of that image being too large. And so this is a perfect way to demonstrate that across device sizes, because, like you mentioned, this is, showing for each window, for each pane. And when you run PageSpeed Insights, you get your largest contentful paint. You get all of your core web vitals for mobile and desktop. You don't necessarily get wiggle room in between the viewports that they're using for mobile. That I think Chrome uses this like Motorola, G4 phone, whatever that is. So it's using those dimensions for mobile. But if you wanted to test something outside of that, if you want to know what the core web vitals might be as far as lab data goes, just testing on the fly, then you would see what those vitals might be for the different device widths. So I love that. And can you speak to what version of so does the version of Chrome correspond with the version of Lighthouse that is within that version of Chrome? Like, do those sync up whenever the Chrome engine is updated within Polypane? Is it also using then the most recent version of Lighthouse to run those tests?
So this uses the Web Vitals library that Google releases. And that is also what Lighthouse and what web.dev uses. And we just use the latest version. So whenever Google releases a new version of that core library, we update it in Polypane.
Yeah, perfect. Ooh, can I get you to quickly speak to the, so as with any web development stuff, we're frequently maybe needing to clear caches or, reload the CSS for a page and that kind of thing. And I know there are different options for clearing cache or reloading CSS on the fly. Yeah. So can you speak to those specific options and why you might use one over the other?
So usually what I try to do is like the biggest reason why you would want to clear the cache is because your server is configured to have cache data. Like it will set cache headers on your files. So what I usually recommend is that people check that their local server, the one they use like on their device or for staging, doesn't do that. Because while it's super handy to have that for your live site, because it saves a lot of data and it makes your site faster, etc. As you're developing the site, you just want the latest version always, right?
Right.
So one of the things that usually trips people up is they have like their MAMP server or their WAMP server, and they just use it as is. And the way that's configured is to be like a regular server, so with all the full caching.
Right.
And that's not great for you as a developer. So you definitely want to turn that off. Having said that, in Polypane, if you right-click the reload button, then you get a bunch of options. There's the reload, which is just reloading the page. You can also reload just the CSS by pressing Option R or Alt R on Windows. So that's a little bit faster, right? because it just reloads the CSS.
So it's just the style sheet for that page?
Yeah, just all the style sheets it can find, it will re-download them and reapply them. And then lastly, you have hard reload, which you can also use Shift Command R for. And that will clear the cache and reload your page after that. Now, if you have a server that you can't configure and you're pretty sure that you never want to use the cache and you don't want to press Shift Command R all the time, you can go to the Edit menu and then disable cache.
Let's see, disable cache, yeah.
And then you can choose to have it either be only for this session, so only while you have Polypane open, or set it to persistent and it will just never use the cache whenever you use Polypane.
Yeah, which I imagine would be handy, especially if someone is, if you're not putting your site into development mode, disabling cache and everything, turning off your Cloudflare, turning off your, if you're using like page caching and a plugin like WP Rocket or something, you might just have persistent and then cache disable displays there. So very cool. Yeah, so tons of fun things to do here. And I think some of the more nuanced features that people might be interested to know that are in here, and some that I'm kind of learning more about are the like accessibility testing, contrasts between colors and all that. We might find some things I need to change on my site here. So where do we go to learn about that?
Yeah, so like the thing that speaks the most is if you open the panel, which is the, you can press Command Shift P for that. And right now you're in the elements panel, which is like basically like the DevTools elements, except this one works across all your panes at the same time. So if you edit something here, you edit it in all the panes. If you select something here, you select it in all the panes. So it becomes a much faster way of iterating on your site, because you can instantly see how your CSS changes happen like across all the panes. But maybe we can, dig into that a little bit more later. Though I do want to point out that there is also an A11Y tab at the bottom, and that stands for accessibility. But because accessibility is such a long word, what usually happens is people shorten it to A 11 letters Y, because between A and Y, there's 11 letters.
Yeah, makes
sense.
So
if you didn't know that, now you know.
I just learned something.
So what we do here in the alley tab, and then basically anywhere else we show element info, is we calculate the contrast for the current element. And we also give you like some other info on that element. So if your element, for example, has an accessible name, which is the name that gets read out loud for assistive technologies, like screen readers. If it has a special role, in this case, it's a link, but it can also be a heading or a button or any of these different types of roles, whether it's focusable, so people can get to it via a keyboard. So that really gives you like a very quick overview of, does this element make sense from a technical point of view? Like there are many reasons why an accessible name would look different to people using assistive technologies compared to how you and I see it on the screen. And because you don't see that accessible name easily, you might overlook something that then really trips up people that depend on those technologies. So yeah, like basically we try to show that wherever we can, so that it's very easy to see if you need to fix something. For example, if you now press the Option key or the Alt key, then we automatically give you info in all panes on the element currently under the cursor. So you can see like the dimensions, the margins, the paddings, and we give this big tooltip with again, like the contrast info, the colors being used, the actual font that's being used to render this element, and then also like all the accessibility information. So this is a really quick way to get at some data quickly. If you're looking at an element and you're wondering, what was this color again, or what's this font size, you can just press Option or Alt, quickly get that info and, get on with your job, rather than having to dig into the DevTools, going to the computer tab, figuring out, where in the list is the thing I want to find. That takes a whole lot of info or a whole lot of work. And then this just makes it that much faster.
Yeah, love that. All right, so talk to me here. So this is on this heading here in the footer of the site, low contrast. So with this white text on this specific background, looks like it may need to be a darker background, right? So that text stands out a bit more. Is that right?
Yeah. So what is happening here is you've used a background image, and that background image actually has enough contrast with the text color, but the colors in the image aren't automatically detectable. So what we're doing is we're checking the white text with the calculated background color. And in this case, you probably have only set a background image and not also an accompanying background color. And we can actually very easily verify that. So if you, above any pane, go to the debug tools icon, which is the third one from the right, and then click disable images, which is the fifth one from the bottom. No, the sixth one.
There we go.
And there you can see that, there's much less contrast here.
Right. So this is just the overlay color on the image. It's not a background color. It's just an overlay.
Yeah. So what you usually want to do when it comes to, to background images is that you want to add an accompanying background color that's like more or less the same shade. Because, for one, then the Polypane algorithm works, which is nice, but also images might fail to load, which is what this debug tool helps you simulate. And if images fail to load and you don't have that background or that backup background image or color, then people aren't going to be able to read the text.
Yeah, especially if you've got white text on if there's just let's say there's no overlay or anything, and it's just all of a sudden you've got a white background, white text. So it looks like there's nothing there, right? So that's a problem.
Yep. So that's something to definitely look at. And then another thing that becomes really apparent with this debug overlay is when your alt text doesn't really make sense. So right below this gray area, you can see the HolyGrail WP image not being loaded. But here it says HolyGrail WP logo. While, if you look at that image on any of the other tabs, it just says HolyGrail WP. So what is happening here is you added an alt text, which is great. And you thought about, what is this image, which is also great. However, and this is something that trips a lot of developers up, because, you have an alt text and you use that to describe the image. So you describe the image, it's the HolyGrail WP logo, right? That makes sense. But we have to go one step further, and that one step further is...
It doesn't say black text with a yellow bar.
Not necessarily that.
Not quite that.
You want to describe to a person that can't see the image what the image conveys. So in this case, the alt attribute or the alt text should just be HolyGrail WP, because that's also what you and I perceive when we look at this image. Right? It's communicating. Yeah, it's the way we read it. Assistive technologies will announce this as image of HolyGrail WP logo. And then also, because it already says image, the logo becomes kind of redundant because it already says that it's an image, and computers do that for you. Yeah. So the trick is that if you're writing alt text, it's really good to look at the image and then decide, like, what is this image saying or conveying, or what is the information that this image is adding to the rest of the page. And in this situation, it's super simple, right? It's just HolyGrail WP. And the fact that it is a logo doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't add anything additional.
It doesn't, yeah,
it's not helpful anything at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Love that. I'm learning good things. This is great. Yeah. This is really good. So, and I'm sure that more things could see. So here's an example of, no image, white background. There's a little shadow on the text, but you can't read that. So this lets me know, hey, this needs to be a black background, maybe like this is. Yeah. So that text is legible. Same thing up here. So, this is great. This is giving me some fun things I can go and play with and work on. So yeah, the accessibility testing is great there. I know there's a tool online called Wave accessibility testing, and sometimes I'll plug in a site there just to maybe highlight on a high level what some of these things might be. But I'm not sure that it's got this kind of functionality. Maybe it does, but I don't know. This seems more advanced to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. But what we can do is we can go in the panel to the info tab, which is right at the top. And then, accessibility is already checked. So this is using the Axe library, which is also the accessibility library used by Lighthouse. And we can actually, if you press analyze page, then it will run the test, which, it takes a while. And we actually only find one verifiable issue here, which is heading level should only increase by 1. So what happens here, probably you have like an H1 and an H2, but you don't have an H3 somewhere. Yeah. So you don't want to skip heading levels because this is
laziness. This is laziness right here. And I tell people to not do this. So this is one of those do as I say, not as I do, because I was just like, I want my font to be that size. And so I was like, let me just be lazy and select that heading level. But that heading level is not descriptive of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I should just set it as an H3 if I want that heading level, then adjust the font size, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you should really see those as they're related but separate. Like the size of a text says something about how important it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to map to a certain heading level. To make this more visual, we can actually switch over to the outline tab. And the outline tab gives you the HTML heading outline, which is also what assistive technologies use to let people very quickly, browse through your page, because they can go from heading to heading. And then here we also show you, like, very specifically, your quest is over is the wrong heading level, because we expect it either to be an H2 or an H3, because that would be fitting under an H2.
Right. And it should really just be paragraph text that is styled to look the way that I want. It really shouldn't even be a heading, because it's not an actual heading. So this is...
Yeah. So what we really try to do in Polypane is not just tell you, like, you did this wrong, you bad developer, go fix it. Shame. No, that's not, that's not helpful. What we really want to say is, here's an issue and here's how to fix it. Like, this is an H4, but it should be either an H2 or an H3. So now you have the solution, and you don't have to go on a quest across Google to figure out, like, what is the actual issue here? How important is it? How do I fix it? The browser just tells you, like, this is an H4. It should be either an H2 or an H3. And now you know.
Yeah. So now we can come over here and just say your quest is over. you found Polypane. We can type in there, which is another fun thing. Like if you want to change text on the fly, and I know that little text box is a fun way to just, edit things.
Yeah, that's super useful if you're still working on text, or indeed you're presenting the site to a customer and they're focusing on the text, which it happens a lot. Then you can very quickly show what a text looks like across different elements.
Yeah,
not sure what you did here,
I've
broken
things. I've broken things. I don't even know what exactly I did there, but I deleted the text that was there, and
right.
I'm just breaking stuff. I could just refresh my page. Anywho, that's what I get for playing on the fly.
Yeah.
So
what's interesting is that this edits the text in all the panes, so you can very quickly see if it fits on all panes, and also if it breaks nicely, or if there's like one word on the next line, and then you can play around with that to make sure that everything looks good across a whole bunch of different screen sizes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to demonstrate. I use a text expander to just drop in some lorem text, and the text expander may have conflicted there, right. But all the text turned white. But yeah, that's what I was wanting to show is, you can just drop in some random amount of text just to see how it breaks or does not break, where you want it to. So love that. Let's see.
If we go back to the outline panel, so first to info and then outline. And you already clicked on it on the top right. There's the headings drop down. We don't just give you an outline of the headings, but also of the landmarks, which are things like the header and the main and the nav and the footer elements. And then we'll also give you some suggestions, like probably this page should have a nav element, because that makes it really easy for people to, find the main navigation. Now, not all pages need a navigation, but most do. So we give this as a suggestion, like probably you want a nav element.
And so when you say elements, are these ARIA landmarks?
So
elements are a different kind of element.
So these are landmarks, which are an HTML thing. So they are things like header, main, aside, footer, section, and nav. But using ARIA, you can change any other element into a specific type of landmark using the role attribute. So ideally, you use HTML and you would add a nav element. But maybe if you can't for some reason, and it happens to be a div or a list or whatever, you can add role equals navigation as an attribute. And then that will also be picked up by assistive technologies.
Yeah, and I do believe within the Gutenberg editor, which this site's using the Cadence theme, and there is on any block, any element that you add in, you can specify an attribute, or if you needed to, put in some HTML anchor of some sort. So that is usually doable. I don't guess I've looked at whether or not that can be applied to one of the menu items here, but I need to explore that. That's good to know. Good to know.
And then the other fun one is links. If you switch over to links in the drop down. So what we do here is we just went through all the links on your page to check what their HTTP return status is. So basically what it's checking is, are there broken links on your page?
Yeah, no need to use a plugin, huh? Some people rely on a plugin for broken link checking or running their site through another tool of some kind. So Polypane does that too. Yeah,
so it just does it inline automatically. And it also tells you if it thinks like there's anything other wrong with your link. Like you have a couple of links that go to the hash sign, and they go nowhere. And that probably means you're using them for some JavaScript stuff.
These are just placeholders for now, because these are just hinting at like, hey, these other courses are going to come, but they click on it, it does nothing. It jumps you to the top of the page. It's just an empty anchor. So
so this this reminds you of that. And then also, like, down there you have the YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram links, and they open in a blank window. And then we also make sure that you do add the no opener and no referrer rel values, just so you know that you're not leaking any data, right? And you already do this nicely, because and then we just show that value, and otherwise you get a little warning.
This little tooltip, can't check 405 method not allowed. Is that something specific to Instagram, or is that?
Okay. So to check a URL, we need to fetch a URL, and we don't want to fetch the entire page, because that would be incredibly slow and very wasteful. So we only fetch the head part of an HTTP request. And what's nice about that is that it's specifically built to do this, but some websites disable fetching just the head, and then they return a 405, which basically says, you're not allowed to do that. And then we can only display a question mark, because we're not sure if the page exists or not, or if they just say, we don't allow you to fetch just the head.
Okay, got it. I wanted to verify just how lazy I've been in other places, and so this shows me where I've done the whole. Again, I tell people not to do it, and here I am doing it myself. So, giving myself some homework. But using a heading where it's like, this is really, it could probably just be paragraph text styled differently. There's no need for all of these headings everywhere. Just being lazy. So no, and this is such an easy way to come across it and find everything that may need to be addressed. So love it. Is there any last hurrah, like maybe one additional feature or something you'd like people to know about Polypane before we wrap things up, Kilian?
So there are hundreds of other features that we haven't really gotten to. There's color blindness simulators and other visual impairment simulators. There's built-in live reloading. You can overlay images on top of any pane, so you can check a design. You can make screenshots. You can make full page screenshots. But I think the one that's the most fun is if you open the panel again.
Not that.
And then go to the meta view. So info meta. This basically shows you all the metadata that you have for your site. So the description, the viewports, the language. If you have a robots.txt, we parse that. If you have a OEmbed, which many WordPress pages have, we show that. We give you warnings for when your description is too long or something is missing. And then what we do is we create these rich snippets for Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Slack, Discord, Telegram, and the Google search result. And all of these are pixel perfect and reverse engineered. So, for example, if you go to the official Twitter tester, then you'll very quickly see that that design is like super outdated, but it's also incorrect, because that's their own tester will just check if you have the Twitter title attribute or the Twitter title meta tag. But what the real Twitter does is, if you don't have that title, it will just use your page title. So what we've done is we've reversed engineered how all of that works, like for Twitter, for Facebook, for LinkedIn, for every social media you see here. So that what you see in Polypane is what actually happens when you share a link. And that's super useful because that means that you can be absolutely sure that if a text fits in Polypane, it fits on the site.
Yeah. So those that are familiar with Facebook's like sharing debugger tool, for instance, scraping the most recent, featured image for the post, or, if you've specified a social sharing image within your SEO plugin, you get to see all that in real time, how it's actually going to display on Facebook. And then similarly, like everything else, all of your metadata, your page title and meta description and that kind of thing is going to be displayed here too. So that's another great way to kind of check up on your, if you haven't, if you're not sure you set it in your SEO plugin, you can see it here.
And the neat thing is that because Polypane is a desktop application, it already works if you're working locally or if you're working on a staging server with a password. Because you can open that in Polypane, but you can't send it to like the Facebook post inspector because they don't have access to that.
Right. It's not a live site. So that's really handy
so
too.
This makes it really easy to check like before you post something on social media to make sure that everything looks as you want it to look.
Yeah. Or you've had a site in development mode and you've not, the site is not live yet. You're still just saying like, hey, is this thing ready to be released onto the internet? You can preview those things before you've actually made it live and accessible to the world. That is a very handy thing. So it's like you've thought of everything, Kilian. This is really cool. And just because I want to push it, I'm going to push the make all the panes button.
We do warn you about that because
resource hungry, right?
every pane is essentially a Chrome tab, except it's not a Chrome tab in the background, which they can throttle. It's an active Chrome tab. So you're basically opening 24 Chrome instances right now that are now
release the Kraken.
All competing for bandwidth and CPU time. That might take a while, which is why Polypane throws up this little warning where it says, "Are you sure you want to do this?"
Yeah.
So what you can do now
fun to know that you can do it.
Press the you can press the V button.
V. Did you say the V button?
Yeah, for volume. And then we switch to the vertical layout. So now it's no longer this tiny little bar at the top of the app, but if you zoom out now, it just fills the screen with your website essentially.
Yeah. All in vertical. Yeah. So all of the bajillion tabs I've just opened, I'm now throttling myself or, whatever, sucking up a lot of resources and everything. Not to mention we're, screen sharing and recording stuff. So, but yeah, not something I just do when I'm testing a site. I don't keep that many open, but, it's usually just the handful.
Yeah. So what this screen does make, what it does help you understand is where you have media queries that are like very close to each other that, you might want to combine. Because if you have a lot of media queries, you can end up with situations where you have styling that's, that breaks like in between two specific media queries because they slightly overlap and you haven't checked that. So essentially, like the less media queries you have, the easier it is to make sure your site works great. And the view you're showing right now is when you have like a ton of breakpoints, we can also just generate the different sizes that you are targeting, but then split them up into 5 different sizes. So all of these sizes are like roughly the average of the different steps in the media queries you do have, but then in like a slightly more manageable 5 different panes.
Yeah. Instead of every breakpoint you may have written. Yeah, that's so cool. Well, let's see. So last thing, I'm just going to switch to regular Chrome tab here. So for those that want to check out Polypane, this is the site. It's awesome. I'll share a link below. I am an affiliate for this, so fair warning. If you check this out, going through my link, I'll get a little commish, get a little coffee money maybe. But if you want to check it out on your own, also Google it. You'll find it. Super cool. Try it for free. Take it for a spin. If you work on sites for, gosh, even just if you work on one website, if it's just yours, this will make your life so much easier when testing your site and just seeing how it performs across different devices. And especially if you do any design services for clients, you want Polypane in your life. It's an incredible tool, and I'm just learning more and more about it every day that I'm using it. And now I've got a lot of things I can play with now. So Kilian, thanks so much for joining me and showing me the ropes here. I've got some homework to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, yeah. So I'm going to go and play with some of this later today and see what else I can do to make the site even better. So yeah, folks, give Polypane a try. And if you check it out, let me know what you think. All right. Well, thanks, Kilian. Hope you have a great one, and we'll talk soon.
Likewise.